Hello everybody. Thank you for being here and for your interest. Thank you also for the talks of Justine and Brendan. I think we have basically two interesting views on the topic now. Because Justine told us a bit about the social media side and about the large groups of volunteers who are engaging in so-called digital humanitarianism or crisis mapping, which is digital humanitarians are the people who are doing this, and crisis mapping is the actual thing they are doing. And Brandon told us a little bit about the people who are on the ground and try to do crisis mapping. So there are different sides, and I will try to elaborate a little bit on that and to go in further detail. I also have an entrance point into my presentation which relates to the use of social media and how it developed in the last, I would say, 5 to 8 years. So here we have a picture of the elections of the Pope in 2005. And what happens, and we have 2013, the new Pope was elected, and we have a whole different picture. I mean, in 2005 everybody was watching, and everybody had their ideas and thoughts. And now the difference was that now everybody could have a picture, a tweet, go on Facebook, use the social media environment to tell their thoughts to other people and to store their thoughts in the World Wide Web. And this is very interesting, and in many ways. And as for me, as I'm a geographer as well, I'm addicted to maps. I love the beauty of maps, how maps can change people, but I'm also very interested in disaster risk management and crisis management. And from that perspective, it is very interesting to see, okay, how can we leverage the social media landscape to use the information which are created by these people to use it for crisis mapping or for humanitarian work or for crisis management work. And the buzzwords which are related to the social media is open data, everything is accessible, it's open knowledge. You can look at Wikipedia, for example. It is incredible how much knowledge you can gather now without, you don't even have to go to a library. And then it's also another buzzword might be citizens as censors. So the citizens, the regular citizens, we are sitting in this room, we can tweet, we can use social media, and we are like living censors of the environment. And this is very interesting, and this can be leveraged in crisis management. So here's an example, or this might be an impression of the social media landscape we have today. We have different kinds of sources. We have the social media sources, we have the broadcasts, we have even the United Nations sources, which are the official sources, and we can crowdsource from all the different sources to gain more knowledge on certain situations. But it can also be very confusing. It is a serious information overload. When we look at the Hurricane Sandy example again, Justine mentioned it already, we had 20 million tweets in 3 days relating to the topic Sandy and hurricane. And she already told us that a very, very little amount of tweets were actually useful. And Brandon told us about the maps which can be created based on social media messages, and we had 42 different crowd maps, with the red dots, for this particular single event. It was a huge event, but still, we had 42 different crowd maps. What does that mean? That means everybody can create a crowd map, but which crowd map is relevant for crisis management? Which crowd map is useful for the responders on the ground? Which crowd map can they trust? Which information can they trust? This is one of the really basic questions. We still have to question it. And put in one slide to put the hammer on the nail on what is crisis mapping. I think that might be useful for us here. crisis mapping relates to the real-time or near real-time gathering, display and analysis of data during the crisis. Crisis mappers or digital humanitarians mostly use social media data, but as Brandon told us, we also use data or information which are collected by the affected populations on the ground. It has something to do with crowdsourcing and crowd mapping, and we are contributing information from remote. We are sitting at our desks, far away from the actual crisis, but also people are on the side of the crisis. And from the crisis management perspective, of course, crisis mapping is there to increase the situational awareness for the responders. So as I already told, it can be an information overload, and we try to make sense of the information. We try to pull out the important bits and pieces, and these are two different challenges. So on the one hand, there's the information overload, 20 million tweets, which tweet is important, how to find that particular tweet. There's not only tweets, we all know also have Facebook and but a lot of other resources, and then how we make sense of this unstructured data. But on the other hand, we also have, so this is big data, okay? This is the cool stuff. But on the other hand, there's also information dearth. So there's lack of temporal knowledge. There's maybe sometimes lack of knowledge of what is really happening on the ground when you're sitting behind the desk and we don't really know what is the situation on the ground, and you have no data. And there's a gap between big data and no data, and it's difficult to bridge that gap. So this is hopefully a general picture, and I would like to go into further detail about the actual tools we use, because Per told me we have a very broad audience today from very diverse background, but he told me that there are also some technical people here. Is that true? Are there some techie guys? Okay, one, yes, perfect. It's good. So I will just drop some general words about the tools we use, and then you have an idea and you can talk about it later in the break and have a coffee together. In general, I would break it down into three different parts. So we have tools for social, in brackets, media monitoring, because it's not only social media, it's also media. We have tools to coordinate and organize ourselves. We are volunteer groups, we are remotely, so how to organize a huge group of volunteers, maybe sometimes a few hundred people who are sitting at different places on Earth. And then, of course, we have mapping tools, and I think we saw some very amazing examples of that already. So social media monitoring. I have a list on my laptop which is growing daily by the tools we can use to crowdsource the social media. This is incredible. And it would fill a whole seminar to talk about that issue. But I just want to show two different tools. So there's one tool that's called Hootsuite. You see it on the right. So you can create different streams for different tweets, tweet hashtags, or for different other sources from social media, and you can search for different keywords. This is very basic. But I talked just very recently to a crisis responder, and they use it on the ground. They use this tool to get a first situational overview. And on the left-hand side, you see a tool which is called Geophilia, which is very interesting because you can search for different channels from Twitter, Flickr, what else you have, and you can draw a polygon on the map, and the result is that you will see the feeds of the social media in that particular area, which is also very useful.
Sorry, what was that called again?
Hootsuite is the right one with the O, and the left one is Geophilia.
Hootsuite, actually.
Hootsuite. But I can provide a list of a lot of the such tools, so it's just to give you an impression. Then coordination. What we use vastly is Skype. Without Skype, I don't know, there might be other tools, but Skype it's amazing. We are organizing in Skype channels all the time. The other thing is Google, the services of Google Docs. We are using Google spreadsheets and we fill them up. I don't know how many spreadsheets we have created in the last 1.5 years. So you see, we use the simple things. It's not the fancy tool which is developed. We try to use what is out there and what works for everybody. And this can be broken down into the services which are freely available. But there's a lot of research being done at the moment to create the one and only tool to do that. But it fails very often. And then, of course, we have the mapping. There are many different tools to map situations or to gather information, and we will have a talk after the break from a person from Ushahidi itself. This is the map, and this is broadly used. Ushahidi. You can search within the tool. You can crowdsource social media and put information from the social media. You can geotag the information, but the limitations of this tool is when you see the map, what is the actual meaning of this map? You see red dots and you see numbers, and then you have maybe a legend, but what is the meaning behind that? What is the story behind that map? So it is very limited in the way that you can do any further analysis of the data. And when you want to pull out the raw data out of this tool, it's a headache. It's a real headache. So I will skip that. So the challenges and gaps in technology, for myself, I see it in interoperability, in security, how to create secure data, its formats. So when you want to pull out information from Ushahidi, it's in a CSV file, and you have to transfer it to another format. So if you have to, it's about interoperability and format. It's important, and it's about handling and design. When you work with volunteers, they want to work, and they want to spend very little time, or sometimes very little time, to learn to handle the tools. They want to use it. So it's about handling, and also about, of course, about design. So I will change the topic a little bit. I would like to, from an organizational point of view, about the role of digital volunteers. How many time do I have left? 5 to 8 minutes. Good. Yeah. So I would like to talk about the role of digital volunteers in the whole sector of humanitarian work, which itself is incredibly huge. I try to break it down. So we have groups of digital humanitarian volunteers, the groups we are talking about here today. Like we are Brandon and Justine and me and several hundreds more. Then we have the professional humanitarians, the staff of United Nations, of international NGOs, of local NGOs, and then we have affected local communities. And it is not, they are not close, so sometimes a person from affected local community can be part of a digital humanitarian network or a digital humanitarian group, or sometimes the staff from United Nations is also part of a digital humanitarian group. But broadly, I would say we have 3 different kinds of groups of actors. And the traditional way these groups behaved was that, or in the idea of the people, how it should work was that the professional humanitarians would reach back to the digital humanitarians to request assistance for a very specific tasks. For example, as in the Philippines, we heard about pulling out social media information and find the right information, and then pouring knowledge together. But in that approach, the local knowledge and the local, like the people, really the people on the ground have the knowledge, what is sometimes ignored. So there is not the linkage But always the idea is to increase situational awareness for the professional responders. So I would say this is a reactive approach, and it is understandable. And it is actually not the worst approach, I would say. Then, what Brandon told us about the Sudan floods, or about Uttarakhand, we had a group of digital volunteers who wanted to help. They wanted to contribute to something. They wanted to do something meaningful, and they reached back to humanitarians, to professionals, and they were like, okay, we are offering a service. So why don't you take our service? We want to help. So this was the kind of proactive approach, and I will talk about that why this can be problematic. And then, what is the way to go for myself? I would like, I'm doing some little research on that, is that it should be a joint engagement. So actually it should be the affected local community who decides which actor to activate, right? So I call it the grassroots approach. That Brandon told us a little bit about what happened in Sudan. I think this is, there are many ways to go, but this is one of the ways we should further explore. And this counts not only large-scale disasters, this counts also for small disasters and maybe for accidents in the city. Or for, I don't know, we should have local groups who have connections to the different actors and have an idea of what they could do with crisis mapping and with professional people working in that field. So yeah, this is to bring in some research perspectives. This is a very just published very recently from the Wilson's Commons Lab Center in the USA, and it's called Connecting Grassroots to Government for Disaster Management. This is a very good resource. So I would like to talk 1 minute about the different realities we have between the different groups. We have the digital humanitarians, the volunteers sitting behind their laptops and trying to do something good. And then we have the humanitarians on the ground, and they are really in the dirt. Because they have to sleep in tents, they don't have much sleep, for them, social media information is one single piece of useful or potential useful information out of a vast amount of information they have on the ground. So there are different realities in the minds of the people. Me, as a digital humanitarian, I have to understand what a professional humanitarian worker is doing on the ground, and vice versa, so that the information I want to provide is meaningful and targeted. So there are different backgrounds in the heads of the people that relates to different realities. We have different perceptions, and, which is, I think, very important, we speak different languages. Not in the language like French or German, whatever, but different language in the way we mean something. And we need to find the common language between the different actors. I will skip that as well. So there are some approaches to find the common language, all published very recently. It's published from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, from UNOCHA, and from the Digital Humanitarian Network. So there are two groups linked together, and they publish this stuff. And they are publishing about how to interact in humanitarian settings with different groups. Another thing I would like to tell you is what we try to do at Heidelberg at the moment. Together with crisis mappers, we want to link into that issue of finding a common language, and we want to make it more professional, and we want to train students and young people and maybe also professional humanitarians to make the next effort of crisis mapping more meaningful. And we think training is a good example for that. So what we did with the Standby Task Force this year, we worked together with the Humanitarian Academy at Harvard and we had an exercise 3 days in April where people are coming from very diverse backgrounds. They are professional humanitarians, they are students, a lot of health students who want to work in the field of humanitarian work later on. And we were working together with them in an exercise. So we were doing this crisis mapping, and they were on the ground in a huge forest, and they had to run around and talk to volunteers who were playing the role of victims of the disaster, and they had to do some assessments, and we were playing this game together with them. And this was an amazing experience because we found that it is so difficult to bring the different groups together. So these are just some expressions. So this is what it looks like when crisis mappers or humanitarians, digital humanitarians are on the ground. So we're sitting in the crappy garage and we're desperately trying to maintain the network connection, which was a little bit challenging. So this, the lessons learned from that is that, again, local knowledge from people who are really active in the crisis on site is crucial, and we need that as digital humanitarians as well to have an idea what's going on there. And in a humanitarian setting, most often decisions are about, okay, when I decide that, it is bad because it means that I have to let down some others, but it's better than worse. So it's the decision between bad and worse. And most often it's about finding solutions ad hoc. That counts for humanitarian settings and that counts for digital humanitarian work. But it is amazing to see how people get very, very creative when they are under time pressure and when they have to find solutions ad hoc. So referring to technical issues, most of the technical issues, it should not be like that, but most of the technical issues are solved in ad hoc situations, because then the issue needs to be solved. This is a very interesting thing, I think. And in my own university in Heidelberg, we are doing courses with students to teach them about crisis mapping and about the tools to use, about the background of humanitarian work, and to teach them the theories, the concepts, but also the very practical tools. And it might be interesting for you, if you're interested also in having courses. Let's make it a joint effort. Let's team up to do that, because this is one way to approach the field. And what we didn't talk about today, because this is a broad field, we didn't talk about liability of information. We talked a little bit about the verifying issue of information, but we didn't talk about how to really treat sensitive information. What about volunteer protection? Can we protect volunteers when they engage, for example, in crisis situations with not only natural disasters, but in other settings? And we didn't talk about more tools, more initiatives. There's a lot of more out there. So I'm looking forward to meet you in the coffee break, and thank you very much.